What's up everybody? We're going to do a quick recap of week 1 and 2 of the peaking block. So if you haven't seen the first video breaking down what it is and how it's going to be structured, I recommend you go back, take a look at that so you kind of know what's going on. But me and Shaun so far we've completed the first 2 weeks, and today will be the first day of week 3. So that week 1 we worked up to a 2 rep max on each of the big lifts. So on our bench, on our deadlift, and on our squat. And when we tested the 2 rep maxes, it went really well. So for both Shaun and I, we had hit numbers for doubles that previously we were hitting for singles and things like that, so it went really good. And the reason that I like doing that is since we're not really trained lifters, like we don't have competition maxes to base percentages off of and all these sorts of things, it helps kind of give us a better idea of where we really are at. And with that gives us the numbers that we can kind of predict off of and then make our percentages for the rest of this peaking block. So we did our 2 rep maxes, took that number that we hit, divided it by 0.95 so that it would be 95% of our predicted 1 rep max, and then that number is the number that we've been using for these percentages. And this first week it went really well. I think that it's a pretty good calculation for us. If you find that's a little bit heavier, using that as 97% of your 1 rep max might be a little bit better. That might have been a good idea for me for the bench. The squat and the deadlift went well. No issues there. It felt good. You know, I was moving at a pretty good speed. I wasn't losing form really bad or anything like that. You'll see on the squatting videos that I was pretty hunched over. So one thing I was trying to work on was bringing my torso a little bit more vertical, not loading my glutes, my hamstrings quite as much, but trying to shift the weight forward a little bit just so I could really drive the bar in kind of a better line of force compared to how I've been doing it. Shaun's looks a little bit better than mine does. You'll sort of see on his, he stays relatively more vertical, which is good. Bench sucked. I don't think my hips stayed down once on the heavier percentages of the bench, the 4x3 by 90%. So for me, it might almost be smart to bring, to change the calculation so that the number I hit for a double can be 97% of my predicted 1 rep max, so bring it back a little bit, just so that I can keep my form better and work at like these higher numbers where I can actually do the lift properly. Bench has always been my shitty one. I'm not very good at benching, so I'm gonna have to play with that one maybe a little bit just so I can really make the most of this last week before going into the final week in which we test on that weekend. The other weird thing is only working out like 4 days a week with a little bit of ab accessory work. Mentally it's different, right? Because I think a lot of us are used to, we have our kind of routine that we go all the time, and when we're just doing like 5 lifts and nothing else really in it, it starts to feel really weird and that we're not doing enough as we should be. But when it comes to these peaking blocks, you need to trust that less is more, and that just doing these high percentages just in the main lifts and being okay with kind of putting everything else on the back burner is what's going to actually help you hit those PRs and hit those 1 rep maxes. Alright, so we're moving into week 3 now, and it's really not much different at all than the past week that we did, week 2. Basically everything is going up by 5%. So for instance, last week we did 4x3 at 85%, 4x3 at 75%, 4x3 at 50% for squatting, and now this week those numbers, the percentages, each of those will go up by 5%, but the sets are reduced in half. So we're doing 2x3 by 90%, 2x3 at 80%, and 2x3 at 55%. This follows the same idea for the rest of the lifts. So the intensity is higher, but the volume decreases a little bit. This will kind of give us, this will be our last chance to sort of feel these heavy weights in the 90% and up range. And then next week will be kind of our taper, and then we go into our peak, which you can see right now on the screen with how it's set up, and we'll kind of go over that more when the time comes. So I didn't film much from week 2 when it comes to the bench and deadlift because we trained out of the community gym here. The deadlift went really well. I don't think there's any issues with that for Shaun or I. The bar we were using, the grip kind of sucked, so that was different. It's better if you can try to use that bar and kind of the same atmosphere that you're going to be doing your testing in. And then the bench, mine was not so hot. I couldn't keep my hips down for the life of me, so I might have to change that a little bit. Shaun, everything was looking good, so it was good. good setup, and I think good kind of calculating out things for him for sure. So this week, keep going at it. It's the last chance to kind of get used to these higher percentages. And as much as I say this isn't when you want to change technique, this is probably a good time where, despite if you train in kind of a more public place, I would recommend you try to film some of what you're doing, because this is going to be a good chance for you to see not only like training at these heavier loads, but for quite a bit of volume. So you might start to be able to pinpoint where you break down and what your weaknesses are, just to help you for in the future of figuring out what you need to target specifically. So that's something that I've been kind of noticing of just watching, especially some of the film of the squat and things like that. It's like, oh, I can kind of see now where when it comes into this next cycle of when we're moving forward, of a lot of what the accessory work is going to target. That's a huge reason why I like doing these as well, is this kind of gives us the basis for what we want to use for exercise selection coming up into like GPP and hypertrophy blocks. And it all kind of depends on your goal. For me, it's like I want to be strong. This is something that I want to make a goal to improve. So using kind of the film to figure out where my weak points are, and then using that to choose exercise selection for upcoming blocks of hypertrophy or whatever it might be, so that it benefits this when I come back into my next strength cycle. I'll see you at the end of this week. Hopefully, if you're trying this out and going along with it, that's something to sort of keep in mind, is the percentage change. So for instance, for my bench press, I'll probably change that because my form is breaking down so bad. So something to keep in mind, that it doesn't need to be set in stone. That's kind of the joys of this, is it can fluctuate and change a little bit depending on how things go when you hit these high percentages. So see you guys at the end of this week.